I'm excited to see so many people connecting and having conversation. We'll have lots of time at lunch to continue that, but I'm going to go ahead and get started and introduce our panel. My name is Jen Dolan, and I'm the Program Manager for the Rudd Adoption Research Program, and I am delighted to be able to welcome you to our conference and to be able to introduce this panel to you. As we prepared for the conference, one of my jobs was to decide who was going to be introducing the various presenters. And because I was in charge of that, I got first choice. And I was very delighted to be able to choose this particular panel to introduce. There's a difference between knowing something academically and having lived it. I think many of us in the room academically have learned about adoption. We've learned about foster care. We've learned academically about navigating the relationship between birth families, adoptive families, and foster families. Our panel here can speak to a lived experience of that. And I think I speak for most, if not all of us in the room, when I extend our thanks and gratitude to each one of these panel members for being willing to come here today and to share part of their story with us. I am going to introduce the chair of the panel, Chris Langelier, who will then introduce the panel members. So Chris is the Heroes Leadership Project Coordinator. Heroes is a program of the Re-envisioning Foster Care in America initiative sponsored by the Treehouse Foundation. Chris received his master's in counseling from Lesley University and has worked as a child and family support coordinator for Berkshire and children families at the Treehouse community. Chris began his career as a paramedic, which I hadn't known, when he gained valuable experience working with youth and families in crisis. In addition, he is an outdoor educator, wilderness instructor, who uses his mental health paramedic outdoor education expertise to serve children and youth whose lives have been impacted by foster care and adoption. And on a personal note, I just want to add that I really enjoy working with Chris. The energy around him, if you will, is always calm and relaxed, and I really enjoy that. So please join me in welcoming Chris Langelier.
Good morning. My hope is that this will end up being a very fruitful discussion amongst our panelists up here, but also, amongst you in the audience, as an opportunity to sort of ask questions of real world folks. A little bit of background on Heroes. Heroes is a youth leadership program for youth ages 14 to 24, and we currently exist throughout the Pioneer Valley. And to be one of the heroes, you have to have experience with foster care, either currently in foster care, having been in foster care, have been adopted from foster care, have been adopted internationally. It's a really big net because we recognize that there are lots of common threads and themes amongst all of those youth. And we really want to encourage the youth voice in our mission of re-envisioning foster care because so much can be learned by listening to them and going through them on their journey. So our youth are trained to advocate on behalf of others as allies and role models for change in the system. And they're also educators, which is their role today, to talk about the reality of foster care and adoption and to dispel some of the myths and social stigma and stereotype that surrounds foster care and adoption. Our panel today is a very broad range of ages and experiences, and they all have their own unique take on their lives. And I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their story, and then we're going to sort of begin our discussion. And then at some point we will open it up to audience Q&A, and there'll be some folks with microphones floating around out there for you guys. We just ask that questions be addressed to me, and then I can sort of track them to the participant that I think would have the most relevant answer, because we've done a lot of preparation for this. So we want to, honor people and honor their experience. So that's a little bit about me, so I'll let you guys spend some time introducing yourselves. We'll start with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Justin Pasquariello. Hi. It's great to see some familiar faces and meet some new people here as well. And I'm excited to be on a panel with Justice and Jessica and Sarah. I've had a chance to hear a little bit about their stories and just think it's great that we have such a diverse array of experiences to share today. So I'm thankful to have them here.
Thank you.
So I'm the oldest one on the panel and feeling a little old, but when my birth father was from England and died when I was 7 months old, and my birth mother had been battling a mental illness for a long time and did the best that she could to take care of me, and at times did a really amazing job, and at times couldn't really take care of herself and couldn't take care of me. And so I was in informal supports when she wasn't able to take care of me for about the first 4 years, spent time with family members and with friends, and then entered the foster care system when I was 4 years old and was in 2 foster homes, and then went to live with family in England for a year. And then she was working hard to get better and got better for a while, was able to bring me back to the United States, and I went back with her for a few months. And then just after my 7th birthday, she overdosed on some medication and needed to go to the hospital. And from there, I went to live with a friend of hers for a week and then went to my family. Although I had a lot of transitions during that time, I was lucky to have continuous relationships with the birth family in England and with some of those friends who were involved and with some of my birth family. And those relationships continue today. So I have a really, really open adoption. The family that I went to when I was 7 years old adopted me 2 years later, and in the adoption agreement, they had some negotiation back and forth. My birth mother wanted 12 visits a year. They started at 1, and we ended up at 3 or 4 per year, which has been really good. And then my relatives in England also had wanted to try to bring me back there if they could, and ultimately everyone decided it made sense for me to stay here, but they were able to have 1 visit a year with them too. And then in addition, my family had an annual trip to see my grandfather in Nantucket until he died when I was 12. And I had relationships with other birth families. So my adopted family is this really big Italian family, and they value family a lot, and they really get the importance of family. And so for them, it was really important to maintain all of those connections for me. And in some ways, I was even more connected to some of my birth family than they were to each other as a result, which has been really nice. My birth mother got better for a long time, and then got a little bit worse when I was in my 20s, and then got better again for a long time, and recently went to some doctors who thought that it would be helpful to change her medication, but that was actually a really bad idea. She's starting to recover again, but I've been with her through that whole process. So that's part of, I guess, openness in adulthood. I continue to see my family in England at least once a year, and my nephew from England was the best man at my wedding. And my birth family and adopted family get along really well with each other, and even at times when they disagreed when I was a child, they did a great job of not letting me know that and of always putting my needs first, at least until I was old enough that if they told me that stuff, I knew how to deal with it better. So I guess that's pretty much it for my intro. When I graduated college, I started a mentoring program for foster youth in Boston, AFC Mentoring, that has a really great executive director, Colby Swetberg, and I'm the board chair there. We also do work for youth aging out of care. And I was a member of the Speak Out team back in the day with Justice, and it's really great to see new Speak Out things happening. So that's it for me.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm 14 years old, and I'm the second youngest out of my brothers and 1 sister. I went into foster care when I was 1 year old, and I got adopted when I was 13. I have 5 siblings, 4 brothers and 1 sister. One of my brothers lives with me, and he got adopted at the same time. I have communication with my mom, brothers, and sister. Sometimes it's through Facebook, talking on the phone, or inviting them to organize events such as my swim meets and my soccer games because I'm goalie. or my brother's basketball, baseball, Boy Scout events, and soccer games. I have an open adoption with my birth mom, and I do not have or want communication with my birth father. Visits with my family sometimes go well, and some turn out to be upsetting. Conversations are mostly about school, but most visits are mostly about me, because I was the only girl, and boys would be boys. When I was in foster care, I wanted to invite my mother to organize events, but she wasn't allowed without permission from social workers, which my family didn't exactly connect with my social worker. Now that I'm adopted, I want my mom to come to my swim meets, and she does. I call it my good luck charm, just like my necklace that my older brother gave to me on Christmas. I feel closer to my brother now and my family. I know that they will be here for me because they've been through the same situation as me. And it means a lot to me to know that I now have a strong and loving family, and they are all safe.
Okay, I'm a little nervous, so don't mind me. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm 18 years old. The first time I entered foster care, I was a baby. Until I was 4, I went in and out of foster care, then I was permanently placed in foster care. I have 5 siblings, 2 brothers and 3 sisters. I was adopted at 13 and lived with my adoptive parents since I was 8. I do not talk to my birth mom. I have not talked to my mom since I was 16, the 16th birthday, sorry. I only have communications with my sister because she was adopted with me. I have chosen not to have a relationship with my brothers and sisters. Where was I? The reason I do not have a relationship with my birth mom, is because she is dishonest and I do not trust her. Despite the relationship with my birth mom, I have a great relationship with my mom and dad, Jack and Mary. They are here today. When I was adopted, I changed my name after Sarah Jessica Parker. I know. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're doing great.
I took my adopted parents' last name. I wanted to change my whole name because I wanted a new slate. My parents modeled me into a beautiful figure that I wanted to become. The end. I'm talking to myself.
Hello. Good afternoon, good morning. I don't know what time it is. My name is, whoa, sorry. Can everyone hear me? Okay. My name is Christine Stevens. My mom is Kim Stevens. A lot of people in here might know her. But now I go by Justice, which is my rap name. We'll go into that a little bit after. When I was 3 months old, I was taken away from my biological mother. I had a couple brain or head injuries, and the hospital at that point in time said that, the baby can't go home with you because this baby has been seen too many times. I was in foster care until I was 8 years old. I was in over 14 homes, and pretty much every house was abusive in every different type of forms. I have 2 biological sisters, Tanya. I'm 27, Tanya's 26, and Dominique is 25. In the foster care system, I was the mother of Tanya and Dominique, so I usually got most of the abuse of trying to protect them. When I was 8 years old, I was transracially adopted. My parents are white. And when I was first adopted, they had a big adoption party for me. They made me feel welcome. It was kind of a culture shock because everyone around me was white. But my family was very welcoming, but unfortunately I tested my parents a lot. I was always disruptive and excuse me, being bad, and I was bad because I felt like this is going to be the time where they're going to tell me to get out of their house. And I was used to trying to protect my sister, so anytime my sister would get in trouble, before my mom could even say, go to your room, I would do something worse, like throw a glass at the wall. So all of a sudden, my mom's direction went from my sister who tried to steal a piece of candy to now, why is there glass all over my floor? And I was used to doing that because I always felt like no matter what, even though my parents never beat us or did anything to us, I always felt deep down inside that maybe they will. Maybe I'm used to it. They're going to. Someday they're going to change. When I was 18, I graduated from high school and I got accepted into Bridgewater State College. When I was 19, I met my biological father. My biological uncle, who was my biological mom's brother, introduced me to him. Now, I had already met my biological mother when I was 11. She's borderline mentally retarded, so I couldn't really get a lot of questions about my biological father answered because she was unable to answer them. So when I met my biological father, when I first met him, it was like looking at myself because I look identical to him. And then I learned about how I was conceived, which wasn't in the right way to be conceived. And he kept me a secret. And the first thing that he did when I met him was he offered me drugs and alcohol. And he told me that he wasn't sure if I was his kid or not. And then his brother said, no, that's your kid. She looks just like you. And then he continued to tell me that this is the way I'm supposed to live. I'm supposed to live like him. And at the time, I felt like, in a strange way, I felt like I owed it to him. I felt like I had to prove to him that I was a good enough kid to keep. I was a good enough daughter to have around and to show off. And that was my downward spiral. I dropped out of college. I stopped taking my medication for my mental illnesses. And I started to live the street life. I started to do a lot of things that were illegal. And I stopped talking to my adoptive family. I stopped talking to my mom and dad. My dad would call me crying. My mom would call me crying. Come to the house. We'd like to have you for dinner. And I always felt like they were trying to set me up, like they were trying to take me away from my biological father. They were trying to take me away from my biological family. And in a way, I knew what I was doing was wrong and I didn't want to disappoint them. But at the same time, I guess I was still testing them. I kind of didn't believe that they really wanted to just see me because I was their kid. I felt like there's something behind it. There's something behind it. Maybe they want to tell me to my face that I'm no longer their child. I was going in and out of jail. And this one last time, I was facing a lot of time. And I wrote to my biological father. And I got a letter back that said, don't write to me. And basically, I was cut off. And that was it. That was when I knew, what am I doing? Even though he's my biological father, he doesn't care about me. He doesn't love me. He thinks about himself. Like, why am I trying so hard to build this relationship when really, in actuality, it should have been the other way around? So when I got out, I was homeless. I was with my ex-girlfriend. Well, she was my girlfriend at the time. But she was my ex-girlfriend now. And I went to my parents' house. I had nothing. I was hungry. I was cold. I'd been living in a car. And I told my parents, I don't know what to do. And my mom said, I know what you need to do. You guys need to come in the house. So my parents welcomed me and my girlfriend in the house, and I was shocked because I was like, wait a second. I didn't talk to you guys for like a whole year. I come knocking on your door, and the first thing you guys say is come in the house, which I'll never forget that. It was like, I'd like to say that's when my testing them stopped. My mom will tell you it didn't, but I really felt at that point in time that it was like, wow, this really is my family. This really is my mom and dad. Like, no matter what I do, even though they might not agree with it, but they're gonna love me. And you know, that was definitely something that I'll always remember. And you know, my siblings, they all have made their own mistakes. We're all human, we all make them. And no matter what my siblings do, my parents might not agree with it, but they're there 100%, and that's what a parent is. And I feel like now, I don't even have to say my adoptive mom or my adoptive dad. I just say that's my mom and that's my dad. And I kind of feel like I should have listened to my parents when I wanted to look for my biological father, because they had heard that he wasn't the best guy. But I felt like they wanted to keep me away from him. Deep down inside, I felt like maybe it was a competition. Maybe why do they want to help? This is my biological father. And then I got my answer. It was because really he was a bad guy. And I think that some kids don't understand that some of the things that people say about their birth parents could actually be true. And growing up in foster care, like I said, it was hard, but I don't know. I'd like to ask if you guys, there's only one way I can really explain to you guys how growing up in foster care was. If you guys could bear with me, could I ask you guys to all do something? I can't hear you guys. Oh, I was gonna say, wow, up here brave, and I don't hear anyone. Could everyone stand up, please? Thank you.
You want to stand up?
Yeah. I want everybody to go to the seat right next to them and sit down. Thank you. You guys comfortable? Comfortable? Can you do it again, please? Get up. I'm hearing the, oh, come on, I just sat down, right? I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. All right, well, I'm nice, so I'm gonna apologize and say I'm sorry, and I'm not gonna have you guys do it again, but that's how we feel in foster care. As soon as we sit down and we're comfortable and we have a point of view and we're starting to get used to school and rules and all that, we're being moved and nobody tells us sorry. Nobody says I'm sorry. They just come and grab our stuff and tell us we're moving again. And now we have to go to a different house, different rules, different school. So I heard a couple of, oh, come on. So that's how we feel. And, you know, to a 6-year-old, to a 5-year-old, to a 4-year-old, to anybody, it's tiring. We're tired. We're human. We don't like it. And that was another thing. I used to get mad when my parents used to punish me for breaking the rules. I used to think that it was just because they didn't love me. But I had to realize that my brothers, who are birth brothers, they grew up knowing the rules. I didn't. That's another thing I wanted to say. But now I rap, and my last album got into the hands of a rapper named T.I. I don't know if you guys know him. And I'm about to sign a distribution deal, if not record deal, with T.I. and Grand Hustle. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, and I really feel that my life story I now put into my music, and I want everybody to be touched by what I went through. I feel like it was all worth it. That's all I wanted to say. I was the only one who didn't move.
Yeah, I know. Thanks.
No problem.
And we all do the do-si-do.
Right? You guys can sit down now. That means you're adopted if you're back. Close.
So before we, you know, sort of open it up to some questions from you guys in the audience, I guess I want to remark on some themes that I heard, which are interesting because I guess you don't pick them up until you sit and listen to everyone's story. But I believe everyone up here has had, thinking about, you know, the family that you're born into and the name that you're given when you're born, and then the name that you end up choosing when you're adopted. I think everyone here has had an interesting path. I definitely heard, you know, you three at the end speak about, you know, deliberate changes in names and choices in names. So I think that's an interesting. And I also heard sort of the theme of trust and how there needs to be trust not only of your birth family, not only of your adopted family, but also trust between the birth and the adoptive family to really make it be successful and to work as sort of a blended, one large blended family. So, and I apologize that I have a little bit of a cold, so if I grumble. So we definitely have prepared, you know, for some questions and for some more. But I'd love to see if there's anyone out there, since we have such short amount of time that has a question that's burning in their mind, and you can kind of flag Clara.
I'm right here.
If Clara, sorry, not Sarah.
It's like Sarah.
Oh, okay.
Don't be shy.
No?
Come on. Questions. Here we go.
Open them up.
Nice.
And we'll just all sort of take the questions and then kind of field them.
Yeah, or whoever wants
Yep.
to speak to it. So one of the sweet things I hear a lot from adult adoptees, or not adults necessarily, from adopted people who reconnect after a long time of no connection with their biological relatives and then build some kind of relationship. I've heard these words used, and they're so poignant, they make me want to weep when I hear them, that no matter what the circumstances are in the birth family or the difficulties, that they find some odd kind of comfort. Comfort is the word I hear used by people who reconnect, even to difficult birth family situations, that there's some kind of comfort there. And their relationship with their adoptive families is good, and they have their mom and dad and those things. So anyway, if you want to speak to that, I'd be interested.
Okay. Actually, I think Jessica, you have an interesting, sort of story about that's similar to that. How you had an experience with your birth family while you were in foster care, and then how that experience sort of improved after you were adopted. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Both of them.
The before and after.
Yeah, so the difference, remember we were talking about the difference in how you felt about your family while you were in foster care and then after you were adopted, and how the relationship with your mom actually improved, your birth mom improved?
So, when I was in foster care, we didn't talk about anything. There wasn't anything to talk about. If I said something wrong, we would start crying. If I said something right, we would start crying because I wasn't with her. If we would just kind of hang out, talk about school, and then we were close to going home, and she got in trouble. She went to jail. She came out and she signed the papers for me to get adopted, and my brother and I started crying. We didn't think she wanted us anymore. We thought she was giving up on us, and she called me one day when we were allowed to have conversations a lot, and it made us stronger because she told us that it wasn't that she didn't love us, it was that she didn't want us to feel unsafe and uncomfortable in her house. I guess it wasn't meant to be as a family then, but it's better to be farther away from people that don't make you safe sometimes. But now that I'm a swimmer and I'm goalie and I've become stronger, I talk to her and I invite her places, and she comes over and she tells me that she loves me, and I understand that sometimes it wasn't meant to be when we were young, but she's stronger and she made us stronger and made us realize that once you're adopted, you have a forever family, and I like both of my families, and I learned to love both of them and grew stronger with both.
Awesome. Do any of you other
That's all right.
folks have an answer, you think?
Well, I think I found comfort in my biological family with looking like my biological father and feeling like I could have any question I wanted answered, or if not, I didn't even have to ask questions. Because when I grew up with a lot of people who didn't look like me, I thought Michael Jordan was my dad and Whoopi Goldberg was my mom, So, and then the teachers, they tell you to make a family tree and you feel left out because you don't know exactly what to do, and you don't know what race you are, and you don't know anything about yourself. It's like you were kind of just found somewhere. So I found comfort in knowing that, wow, I do look like these people. I know where I get my fingers from. Oh, I laugh like that too. Oh, you don't like hot dogs? Neither do I. I think I felt like I belonged.
Hi, I'm interested in the topic of broken adoptions and disrupted adoptions, and I'm curious if anyone could comment whether or not you were in a pre-adoptive home prior to your adoption and that ended up disrupted.
I don't.
My sister was
Yeah.
Dominique.
Yeah. Do you want to speak about that? I think that might be the closest.
My sister Dominique, when I was adopted, my sister Dominique was supposed to be adopted with us, but the foster family, they only wanted to keep Dominique. And weeks before they were supposed to sign it, they changed their mind. Now that I'm an adult, I know that it was because it was a money issue. They thought that they were going to get paid. I never knew that my sister remembered that, but last time she came to visit me, she had told me that she did remember that she was supposed to be adopted, that they had bought her address, and then that all of a sudden they said they didn't want her. And I know that she always had a difficult time with that. She has a hard time attaching to people. She always feels like she can't get close to them because at any given second they're going to change their mind. And she's been having a tough time with staying in one relationship. And like I said, she's 25 now, so I can only imagine how she felt about that. 20 years later, it still affects her. And yeah, that's basically it.
Hi, I had a question for Justice. You talked about how many years it took you to really trust that your adoptive parents wanted you and would be there no matter what. And I just wonder if you can imagine any circumstances that it would have helped you get to that point sooner, possibly hearing from other youth that had been through it, or any things that you can imagine now that would have shortcutted that difficult process for you.
I think that's a really good question. That's a really good question. Honestly, what my mom used to do when I was younger is she would drive to far places. Like if she'd say, hey, you want to get an ice cream? Instead of going to the ice cream shop next door, she would go to the one 15 minutes away because I would talk. I would feel comfortable talking in a vehicle because I didn't have to look at her. And I feel like I should have really paid attention more to our conversations. I think that I should have definitely just listened more to her. I think that if I was around other kids too that was in my same situation, my exact situation, I think that it would have helped me out too. But honestly, like that's really hard to answer because I'm a stubborn individual. I'm a Leo, so it's in my nature just to do things my way, you know what I mean? And wow, I don't know. Wow.
That's
I don't
okay.
even know. I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, I don't know. I have no clue. Because I sometimes find myself even today, like, I don't know, like, if I make a bad decision, I know my parents are there, but it's still to this day, and I'm 27, where deep down inside, 1%, I'm still like, this is it. This is it. This is it. I don't really know how to answer that question, though.
Thanks for trying.
I wonder, Sarah, you and I were speaking, and I remember you telling me a lot about things that your adoptive parents had did to sort of make you feel comfortable in their home, make you realize that it was a permanent connection. And you guys talked openly a lot about contact with your birth family. So I didn't know if you thought you might have an answer to that question. What people could do to sort of help that process and help you adjust and help you feel comfortable in an adoptive family.
When I was with my two adoptive parents right there, yeah. Why? So raise your hands. The first day I went there, I was like, I couldn't trust anybody. Like, how could I move to 25 foster homes? Like, I moved from place to place. Like, who are these people? They're not going to love me. They're just going after the money, whatever they can get their hands on. And then I go over into the country, country. I mean, like, country. And I was originally from Springfield, so this is like, woo, there's woods? Where? What? And so I went there, and the first time I met them, I was like, yep, this is it. I'm gonna misbehave, and here I go again, all over. Same process. And every time I misbehave, they'd look at me like, yeah, you're not going anywhere, so what do you think you're doing? And so a couple days later, I had to leave. I had to go to another foster home for like a couple of days. And I went back, and I was taught when I was at the other foster parents' house, I was like, they do love me. Like, wow. Like, I thought to myself, they didn't give up on me. They didn't call DSS and say, hey, get this chick out of my house. They didn't do that. They were just looking at me like, she's the one for me. I'm very religious, so in my eyes, they talked to God, and God was like, this is the girl for you. And I came back, and they weren't home. They were at a Piccadilly pub. Great place for a burger, just to let you guys know. And so my dad's son was there. He lived there at the time, and he had brought us to Piccadilly pub. And I ran in, and the first things that came out of my mouth was mom and dad. First things. And so they were kind of surprised that, a foster kid could trust somebody that they didn't even know. For only 2 days they knew me, and I was like, wow, they do love me, so I'm just gonna stay with them. So I stayed with them for over 10 years. It'll be 10 years on Mother's Day.
Wow.
So.
And we're just going to come back in this direction. I know that, Jessica, you have an interesting sort of story about how you got connected with your adoptive family, because your brother actually went first. So I don't know if you want to answer that too, like what that family did to sort of make you feel welcome and accepted, and what that was like for you.
When I was in 4th grade, I was in an elementary school, and I was in a home, and I was there for a year. Then I went to 5th grade, and I had a sleepover with my mom, and we were about to go home, and then she went to jail. But then after that, my foster family didn't want me anymore. I felt kind of alone. And then I was about to move another house, and I was with my brother Matt, and he was in 3rd grade, and my brother's so adorable, but
She's not lying either.
but he had a teacher, and at the same time, my brother was in Springfield, my older brother, and he had a teacher, and they had the same last name, and it was like, wow, like, I have you, and you're 12, and I have you, and you're 16, and so it turned out that my brother that I lived with had this 3rd grade teacher that wanted to adopt him and take care of him for a while, and I had no idea who she was. When I was walking in the hallways, I was like, she scares me. But I was like, I don't know, because I was in 5th grade, and she was a 3rd grade teacher, and all of a sudden, they're like, oh, you're gonna move, and you're gonna go to a new house, and I was like, again, I get it, like, it's gonna be again, okay? So I get in the car, and my brother's like, we're going to my 3rd grade teacher's house, and I'm just like, okay, like, I didn't know who you were, like, all right. And then I was like, we pulled in, and then Matt he gets out of the car, and he goes, a house, and I was like, okay, like, yeah, and I was like, all right. So I sat down, and I was like, okay, like, this is nice, a house, and my brother looks around, he goes, a piano, because he didn't know what that was, and then he looks down, and he's like, my own dog, and we're just like, yeah, and he was like, he looked at them, and he goes, this is a nice house, and we're just like sitting there, and he starts playing basketball, and I was like, okay. So we sit at dinner, and he's like, so they're talking about our life, and we're just like, so and it turns out that my dad is a teacher in Springfield, and he's an 8th grade science teacher, so he was talking about one of his students named Patrick, and I was like, my brother's name's Patrick. And then he's like, what's your last name? And we're like, oh, McDonald. And then he was like, oh, that's my student's name. And then we're like, whoa, because it was like a connection that I was in Chicopee and my brother was in Springfield, and we had the same teacher, and it was like, whoa. But then a couple years later, they adopted me and my brother, and we still see and talk to my brothers, and yeah.
We have one more question.
You wanted to respond to.
Yeah. I think for me, I definitely tested my family some, but there's also a part for me about wanting to feel worthy of being with my family, worthy of having friends. I think because of situations and just where I was developmentally, where stuff happened with my birth mother, like I saw her taken away by the police when I was 5, and I thought that I should have stopped that from happening, and just thought I wasn't kind of worthy of being loved. And I don't know if that ties into any of the testing stuff for other people, but yeah, for me, I think I wouldn't have understood a reason why people would just love someone without earning it. So I thought I had to maybe do really well in school or do whatever else so that I could prove that I deserved that. And I think that took a really long time to go away. I'm not sure exactly when it went away, but as I think about it now, I don't think I have to earn my wife's love, which is good. But I guess the things that parents can do on that, it's interesting to think about, like, I did well in school, which was good, so I got praise for that, but that would just reinforce this idea of, like, ways that I can earn my keep, kind of. So I guess things that just reinforce the value of people as people without having to do anything to earn it might be things that can help with that process.
Hal spoke about adoption in context, and then also watching the movie where the interpreter certainly had a different influence. Could you all speak on the influences of your social workers and how they might have impacted the contact you had or you didn't have with your birth families?
So they're social workers while they were in foster care? Is
Yes.
that, yeah? Okay. Do we want to go back across again? So the question is just the social workers that you had while you were in foster care and how they influenced the contact that you were having with your birth family at the time that you were in foster care.
I know that my social worker, her name is Sharon, she had contact with my biological mother. My biological mother had wanted to see me and my sisters, and I don't think mentally she was ready to see us. I no longer speak to my biological mother also because she's just not a healthy person, you know. But I know that my social worker was definitely involved with making sure that me and my sister stayed safe at the time. And nobody knew who my biological father was. My biological mother refused to speak about him. And then when I found out my story and how I came to be, I could understand why. And but my social worker, she was really cool. It's just that she didn't really know all the abuse going on because my foster parents that were doing it, they know how to train you. They know how to get into your mind. So my social worker really didn't have any idea about anything like that going on, but that's off the question. I'm sorry.
And Sarah, in particular, I remember we had talked about you had some specific requests and wishes when you were in foster care or on visitation with your mom, and your social worker and you kind of came to an agreement about that. So I didn't know if you want to share that piece.
That was like 10 years ago.
I know, it was like 10 years
How
ago.
am I supposed to remember that long? Well, I can remember a map, so let's try this. I had, I think, like 3 DSS workers. Not sure. I don't remember. Linda, Patty, some other person. But sometimes we had an agreement that we'd see my mom like maybe twice a month, maybe once a month. It depended on how she was doing. And we would go to see her, but it was like a really, really weird kind of situation where she would always bring like a baby because she had like a baby like every month. Well, not every month, but but she always had a baby. We went to the DSS office. The cubicle was like the littlest thing I could imagine. It had a little toy, not very playful with. And we would see my brothers and sisters, and I would always ask my DSS worker, are we gonna have like lunch there, food? Because I was a chubby kid, I wanted to eat. And we never did, and so we just kind of learned to like respect, but it was kind of hard after a while. Once I got a lot older, it was kind of hard because every time I would leave, I would throw a tantrum because I didn't want to leave my mom. I loved her, and it was just a big old cyclop mess. And so one day I decided with my parents and my DSS worker that I no longer wanted to see her because it was just too traumatizing for me. Every month I would go through the same problem, and it was just getting tired. I'm tired of always crying over a stupid little person. And it's just couldn't handle it anymore, so I stopped. And I hadn't seen her for like 5 to 6 years. No, more than that, like I'd say 9.5 years. So kind of got over it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And the fact that your social worker and your, at the time, foster parents were very supportive of your decision and honored your request was very important to you.
Yeah, it was.
And I remember, Jessica, we had chatted a little bit about sort of the influence that the visitations had in your social worker around like gifts and expectations and rules and things like that. And I didn't know if you wanted to answer that question by addressing those things.
So during like visits, I would be the only girl again, just be like having like all these like problems that I wanted to talk to my mom about, but I couldn't because there was 4 boys around, and I couldn't say anything, and I would just sit there. So she would ask me like questions, and I'd just be like, I don't know, like I can't answer that right now. And then like she would be like giving me like sometimes it'll like go from like a shirt or a sweatshirt to like an iPod Touch and a phone, and I would go home with it, and my foster parents were like, does your social worker know that you have that? And I was like, no. And I was like, it doesn't really matter, like it shouldn't have to go through that process. It's like that's my mom that gave me that. And like sometimes I was stubborn. I'm like, I'm not giving that to you, like that's mine. And they would look at me and they'd be like, you can't have it, you have to go through a process, you can't have communication devices without without your social worker's consent. So my mom would go to them and they'd be like, no, they can't have it. And now that I'm adopted, I pretty much have everything that I ever wanted, and I talk to them all the time now. But it's just like the fact that sometimes you would have to go through that process is a lot.
And you spoke too about how at the time it wasn't really explained to you very well, and how with the hindsight you have now and the maturity you have now looking back, that had there been more of an explanation and more of a sort of a dialogue, that you think that would have been very helpful to you?
If they gave you like a way of saying that you can't have this or this, like they can give you clothes and stuff, and my mom would give me clothes and she'd be like, this is for you, and I'd be like, okay, and like I would wear it, and then like sometimes they would like I would go home and like, you can't have that and you can't have that, and it's like, well, what can I have? Like you tell me that I can't have this, but you never explain to me what I can't have. So I was like, if you talk to me during the visits, or if you actually pay attention to what my mom's giving me, you can tell me at the visit, or you can just write it down and give it to me, or give it to my mom so she at least knows what she can give me or not give to me.
I had 2 main really great workers from age 7 till 18, so I want to say something about openness and ongoing connection with workers too. But first, what they did for my birth family, my ongoing worker until I was adopted, really valued the relationships and would help me with processing things when I went to visits, helped me with things I was concerned about on the way there and on the way home. And when I went back to England for the first time after a few years, I was kind of nervous about going because I hadn't seen my family there in a while. And my worker talked with me about it and bought me 101 Dalmatians to bring on the plane and read with me. And it was just really nice that she took that time to help me to think about that and feel more comfortable about it. And then she processed the closing of our official relationship really nicely too. She brought myself and my sister, who's my parents' birth daughter, to her house, and we made ice cream and saw her husband's model train set. And it was just really nice to have that. And then I had a really unique situation, which I think the state should totally replicate, and I know that it won't because of budgetary issues, but my open adoption agreement included the requirement that the state would oversee the visits until I was 18, and that was something that my parents wanted and that worked well for my birth mother. So my adoption worker and I met every 3 or 4 times a year, and she brought me to the visits and also helped me to process things on the way back and helped me with things like my birth mother wasn't supposed to know my address and she wanted to buy me this thing and the store was asking for my address, so the social worker would help me kind of triage that in real time. And then she brought my birth mother to my high school graduation so that she was able to be there in the audience too. And I gave a speech there and thanked families, and the social worker encouraged my birth mother to stand up to be recognized with the other people, which was nice. So both workers I have a relationship with now, and I think that's really important, and I probably should know but don't know kind of the state of policy right now in regards to relationships that workers can have after kids are officially not with them. But I think it's really good to keep those relationships going. I don't think that some of the old ideas about boundaries work all that well, because I think kids need those relationships. It's someone who's been in their life for a long time. My adoption worker has continued to be in my life, helped when I was starting up the mentoring organization. I had lost touch with the ongoing worker because she was told she couldn't stay in touch with us. And then I was speaking at a conference in California one time and I knew she was out there, didn't know where. And I mentioned that and someone was like, I can find her in 15 minutes. And they did. They looked her up in some kind of statewide system. I called her and now we're back in touch and we've met up when she's been in Boston and it's been really great.
So we have just a couple of minutes left. So I say, why don't we go through one more time, kind of lightning round, and think about, these are the professionals who are looking for your knowledge. So if you could each give them sort of one tip, one piece of advice to carry back with them, to their professional worlds, what would that tip or what would that piece of advice be?
You want me to start? Yeah. Are you sure? I have a lot of tips. I think that siblings should be together. I think that the adults should definitely listen to the children. I think that we're the best teachers. Please don't say that you understand. If you don't, we hate that. Pay attention to us. We're not just a number, we're people. Tell the teachers to stop assigning family trees. We don't want to do them. And go for very long car rides. And don't give up on us. Please don't give up. Because that's what we're expecting you to do. That's what we want you to do. Well, we'll tell you that's what we want you to do. But in actuality, like all of us here, we're all success stories. Every person in the foster care system is a success story, and we're all worth it.
Is it Moa's turn?
It is Moa's turn, yes.
All right. I have a couple too. Learn to respect us. We have a lot of knowledge of a lot of things that nobody really listens to. We want you guys to know that we understand what we're doing, and sometimes you guys like, oh yeah, whatever, y'all can do whatever you want, and it's just like, don't let us do whatever we want. Tell us what we have to do to get into a home that we would love. And another one is listen. Listen. Don't ignore. Just listen. Listen to what they have to say. Listen to what they want to hear. You have to earn their trust, is what I'm trying to say. A lot of kids can't trust because they've either been in a really bad foster home or they've been in a really bad situation in their life. All right? And another one is try to tell them where they're going to go, the name of the street, the name of the person. Please. I'm just asking because, there are a lot of kids that are going to be really scared because they don't know where they're going. They don't know what street they're going to go to. They don't know what school they're going to go to. They're scared as heck. They're going to be like little dogs that been hit. They don't know what's going to happen next. Always tell them what street they're going to live on. Let them know that everything's going to be okay. All right? Jessica, on to you.
One tip is when I used to visit my mom, the closing word would be goodbye. I'm never going to see you again. Don't say goodbye. If you ever have to say goodbye, but if you're going to see them again, say see you later. Because every time my mom said bye, that would make me cry. Goodbye, I'm never going to see you again. But when my social worker and my mom would be like, no, it's see you later because I'm going to see you again. And there's always going to be a moment in life where you see that person again.
Thank you for all the work that you do. I don't envy the job of caseworkers at all, and I think for the things that I would like to see have happen, we would just need way lower caseloads, which we just definitely need, because what I would like to see happen is to preserve all of the relationships that are in the child's life that the child wants preserved. I think it's not enough to preserve a relationship with a birth mother. It's not enough to preserve a relationship with siblings. It's this really sad irony that as kids move around the child welfare system and meet more and more people, they have fewer and fewer relationships. It doesn't make sense. They should have all of those relationships, and a lot of those people want to support them, but lose touch with them and don't know how to. And I think if we could keep all of those relationships going, at least the ones that are positive in the child's life, that we could find settled, positive homes for kids much quicker, and kids could be doing much better. And then the other thing that gets lost is school. And it's so sad to me that for a lot of kids, school can be the one positive place in their lives, and school districts do this kind of pass the buck thing. You're not in our school system anymore. You're gone. The other one waits 3 weeks for vaccines. People are concerned about safety, which is obviously the primary concern, but when we don't watch out for how kids are doing in school, it's really tough for them to be successful later. It's just a big barrier to that. So to the extent that caseworkers can do work around that, that's great. And I just think the state needs to do a whole lot more around education than we're doing.
Can I say one more tip based off of what Justin said?
Yeah.
Because I thought that was a really good point that you had made about what is not crossing the boundaries. And I think that feeding off of that, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think one of the tips would be with the teenagers that are going to age out of the system and who are often very, forgot about, or not saying that anyone forgets about them, but they feel like they're not important. And then it's like, well, what's the next step? Because as a social worker, I can only imagine how much you guys want to help that teenager, but then it's like, well, can you help that teenager once they age out? I think that basically what I'm saying is the tip would be to let the teenagers know that they're not alone and help them in some way.
Awesome. And I want to thank you guys all for being with us here today and going to this conference. We will be available. We have our a poster presentation over there at the board that we'll be manning. So if there are other questions, comments, thoughts, please come over and visit us and say hi. But thank you for your time.
Great, and I want to thank all of you. I don't use this word lightly, but I would say this was an awesome presentation. So, thank you. Learned so much.